Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. This is our first college football playoff preview. This one will be Friday night in South Bend as Curt Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers roll up to the north of Indiana, take on Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is the 7-10 game in the playoff, and the winner will go to face Georgia in the quarterfinals. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and I'm joined by Joe Meade. And Joe, we are going to be previewing and recapping most of the Big Ten's postseason games, and we're starting with the Indiana Hoosiers, the surprise of the country, going 11-1 in Curt Cignetti's first year in charge. The Hoosiers have really not played a close game all year, barring a game that got a little dicey late against Michigan and a heavy loss on the road at the Shoe to Ohio State. But Joe, nobody really expected the Hoosiers to be here, and here they are playing a rivalry that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, Sean, if you would have told me Indiana was playing Notre Dame in the postseason, I would have thought it'd be like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, or to be quite frank.
I would have taken that at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think that'd be 99.9% of the country, and the 0.1%, I would have hoped you cashed your bet because you'd be a rich man right now. But rich guy or gal, actually. Anyway, getting off that, Sean, I think this is a really fascinating matchup for a lot of reasons. I think where Notre Dame's really good is their run game, whether that's Riley Leonard taking it and obviously Jeremiah Love, who I think is one of the most outstanding running backs in the country.
And he is reportedly good to go for this one. He did leave the USC game early, but he'll be 100%.
Yeah, and that's actually something, Sean, that I think is to Indiana's advantage, not the Jeremiah Love injury or health status. I think the fact that Notre Dame's main focal attack is the run, that's something Indiana's done very good at stopping the whole year. I think even into the Ohio State game, I thought they did a pretty good job. I just think a lot of things in that game, particularly special teams, got away from them. And by the way, special teams, if you watch Notre Dame, that's not something they've thrived in. Take away the Northern Illinois game. Let's pretend that game wasn't even played. Look at all their other 11 games. I think they're like 8 of 17 on field goals. So as we saw in the Michigan-Ohio State game, for people in this conference, special teams late in the year, especially the cold, will matter. So definitely something both teams will have sharpened up. But I don't want to talk this whole time about special teams.
And in terms of Notre Dame, Joe, they also come in at 11-1. Not quite the strength of schedule that they probably expected when they started this year. They started the year with a victory on the road at Kyle Field against Texas A&M. They lost the famous Northern Illinois game. They beat Purdue on the road in the only common opponent between the two. They beat a number of ACC teams, Louisville, Stanford, and Georgia Tech. They beat Army and Navy by significant margins, Florida State. And then the game that really Big Ten fans will remember closer, which was their last game at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum against USC, where they just USC couldn't really hang with them late. But in terms of Notre Dame, Joe, you have to say that this isn't the best draw for them in terms of not playing a Southern team in the weather. Indiana's played tons of games in the weather that they're going to have. It's an in-state opponent. It's certainly not the home field advantage that they would have if it was an SMU or an Alabama or a Clemson coming up to South Bend. And Joe, all 4 of these first-round games are essentially around the same for the spread. The home team is favored by 7. You have to say that that's about right. I would probably give Notre Dame about a 3/4 chance to win this, but like you said, Indiana's defensive line is certainly their best unit on that side of the ball. And then the special teams, their kicking game has been a disaster, especially recently. And if you're thinking if Notre Dame make the first couple mistakes, Joe, and Indiana can take a lead and get that crowd a little bit nervous, Notre Dame really hasn't played from behind in quite a while this year. Even that USC game where USC was matching them, they never had the lead in that game. So the key for Indiana here is to make Notre Dame play from behind, make Riley Leonard a passing quarterback, and maybe if you are able to make fewer mistakes, you might be able to pull off the upset here. But that's the only path that I see.
Yeah, Sean, I think the theme we're going to see in a lot of these games, maybe except the Penn State SMU game, which click on that video, that'll be uploaded. I think scoring first in this game is so crucial, as it will be in the Ohio State-Tennessee game, albeit for different reasons. I'll explain here. If Indiana could get up 7-0 and establish their style of play, something I thought they couldn't really do against Ohio State because of their explosiveness, I think Notre Dame's going to get very concerned. And if you make Notre Dame take a few chances, I think Indiana's defense could make a huge play. And I'll put it to you this way: Indiana gets out to a two-score lead. I do not see how they lose this game. I think what they have with Ellison and Lawton in the run game, Elijah Surratt in the passing game, and quite frankly, Sean, I give Curtis Rourke the distinct QB advantage in favor of Indiana. I think his decision making this year has been really good. I expect him to protect the ball a lot, and I think with that said, with the lead, I don't see how Indiana would lose should they get to that lead. Now, what ultimately happens, I think this goes back and forth, not in terms of score, score, score. I think it's a strategic game where field position's a big deal. Missed field goals are going to be a huge deal in this game. I have the strangest feeling Indiana pulls this off. Give me the Hoosiers to win 23-21. I think a missed field goal by Notre Dame is what does them in. Something that did them in their worst loss. And their worst loss, let's face it, in the Marcus Freeman era, but it didn't really end up costing them anything. But I think this time it does.
Yeah, Joe, I have this game being maybe like a first half, like 7-3 or something. I think both teams will be pretty cautious. I think both teams will think that the other team is explosive enough on offense to hit it to get a big play. So we might see a couple longer drives, 3-4 yard carries and a lot of quick passes. But in terms of teams that have been able to stop Indiana this year, you have to put pressure on the quarterback. And that's not something that Notre Dame has done to great effect this year, especially early in the game. So maybe if Rourke can get a rhythm, he just really never did against Ohio State and really against Michigan in that second half. But hopefully, for Indiana to have a chance, Cignetti needs to get the ball out of his hand, get some quick rhythm hits early, and maybe you can take a lead. And that is the way that I see Indiana winning, Joe. They get up early, and they just sort of hold off Notre Dame for the majority of the game. But in terms of Notre Dame getting up early, their running back duo might be the best in the country, and they're able to eat away games, especially when teams get tired. So this might be a try and get in the lead and hold on game. And I do think Notre Dame will do that. The running backs are going to eat in the second half. They've made some good defensive teams look pretty bad in the third and fourth quarter. So I'm going Notre Dame 27, Indiana 20, but boy, would I like to be wrong. But Joe, unless you have anything else to add, we're going to wrap this one up.
No, Friday night, first ever 12-team playoff game, so I think buckle up.
This is also the first game, Joe, that'll be played at the Notre Dame Stadium to be broadcasted by ESPN since the 1980s. So something that has never happened,
NBC
really.
executives are
Yep.
clutching their hearts right now.
And College Game Day will be there on Friday, and then it'll also be somewhere else on Saturday. But check out that video later. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this college football playoff preview. We'll be back in a couple days to do the recap. See you next time.